name is Matthew Segar, and today I'm going to be having a quick chat with Elisee, talking about his background and how he basically got to it. So do you mind giving yourself a quick introduction for people that don't know who you are and what you do?
Sure. So my name is Élisée Maurer. I'm a game developer, I guess, a game creator. I'm 31 years old. I'm from France, and I've been making games for a bit over 20 years, I guess, now. I started like really early. I was really into programming and all that stuff. And yeah, I've done a variety of things, games, tools, apps, and stuff like that.
Yeah. So definitely did quite a lot of things. We'll definitely get to them at some point. But I guess let's wind it back to kind of the beginning. What kind of gave you your first introduction into why you wanted to maybe pursue game development? I'm talking like high school level, like back when you're in high school days. What kind of gave you
Right.
the initial push to, I don't know, pursue computer science or game development, I guess, those kind of things?
So it actually started like quite a bit earlier. When I was like 8, I was playing like video games. At home we had a very old, well, like Pentium 166 megahertz computer back then, and I was playing like Warcraft 1 and stuff like that. And we had a Super Nintendo too. So
Hmm.
I was really into like playing the games, and then I stumbled on a little book about monsters making games. Like it was in the back of my like class, and so I asked the teacher if I could take it home, and I did. And yeah, I just looked at that, and it was like basic, the basic language program. And so I started typing them up and learning from that, and I got hooked. Like I was like, oh my god, that's awesome! I can just make the computer do stuff.
Hmm.
And from there, from that age, I just started making stuff regularly, learning new languages, new technologies, and stuff like that. And I never stopped. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, at 8 years old, that's extremely young for sure. I would say that like coming back to me is the reason why I kind of brought on LAZ is he was kind of one of the main reasons why I got into programming, or at least the fundamental reason why I started programming. Is I would say I didn't do very much programming up until I got introduced to kind of some of the things that LAZ made that we can talk about later on. Um, but anyways, so I guess obviously you're pretty interested in programming. I'm assuming that kind of went through the high school equivalent of whatever France kind of does. I don't know if the system is different, probably a little different. And then I think you went to, I guess, your equivalent of like college and university for computer science or something related.
Yeah. Yeah. So like after I was done with high school, I was sort of like searching for what I could do. And in the city where I was, Strasbourg, there were no like proper video game schools. So I ended up at a I guess university called Supinfo in France, which is like a generalist um, computer science school.
Mm-hmm.
But I figured out, oh, actually we're gonna start from scratch, right? And I've been doing this stuff for 10 years, so now I was quite bored actually. So
Okay.
I spent a year there, and there was an internship over the summer, and I was quite lucky to find one in a video game company, like one of the very few that were in Strasbourg. And so I spent 3 months there, like doing prototyping with iPhone stuff back in the day, because it was like the start of all that. And at the end of the internship, they offered me a job, and so that's where my education ends, basically. Like my traditional education ends. Yeah, I just did one year post high school.
Yeah. So I guess your main idea was is you really wanted to go into game development. It sounded like you really wanted to work with video games as opposed to like general like computer software. Or I'm assuming you definitely did
Right.
write it initially, but your mindset was kind of working on games essentially, right? Was that kind of the most
Yeah, yeah,
interesting thing
yeah.
for you?
Yeah, I guess just the idea of working with interactive systems and stuff was very exciting for me. So, um, like doing just apps, regular apps wouldn't have, I guess, kept my interest too much. But yeah, video games was the thing.
Hmm. Yeah, and for sure, I definitely see that at least in my university, for example. Like me coming into university, I had like okay experience in programming, but I definitely realized that someone with like a very large programming background, like you said, you programmed for like 10 years, it's not too surprising to see you like hired directly out of like your university, because even I only doing like 2 or 3 internships. I've already been like offered to basically be poached from like university, because yeah, if you have
Okay.
like some like background in computer science or the jobs are very in demand, at least for computer science. Maybe this is just anecdotal, but yeah. Anyways,
Yeah, I think like if you've got like some experience, especially like cool project that you can mention and stuff like that, it makes a big difference, right? Because when you're looking at resumes, if you can see someone who's done stuff, who hasn't been waiting for whatever like somebody to tell them to, but they've just been trying and having fun and they're excited about stuff. Like it stands out.
yeah.
So yeah,
For sure. Yeah, and it sounds like obviously, I think I did a little bit of reading, and you definitely did like quite a lot of programming in terms of like just like random ideas you had, kind of when you're in high school and university.
exactly.
You definitely had that
Yeah.
passion. So yeah, so after that internship that you did was a company. It was almost like it seemed like more of like an indie dev company, um, right? Or would you
So
say it
it
was
was
kind of
like
like, yeah? Can you expand on that a
it
bit?
was like 30 person when I joined,
Okay.
so it's already quite a big company. So the idea was, I guess indie game devs didn't quite exist back in the day, or it was really starting sort of. So what they were doing, they were development studios, and they got like contracts from publishers. And mostly what they were doing at the time was a Nintendo DS game development. So when they offered me to join, I joined a team that was working on a game for young girls, like aged 8 to 12, I guess, which was called. I guess in English it would be Imagine Boutique Owner, I think it was. So I don't know
Okay.
if you know the series Imagine. It was a pretty big, actually, at least in France. Lots of different games, all targeted for young girls, and yeah, all about like playing a role in life and stuff like that. So definitely, I wasn't the target demographic for it. It wasn't necessarily the kind of game that I was excited to make,
Hmm.
but it was actually a really good experience because we were working in a small team of like four programmers, and my lead programmer was someone that I really respect and that taught me a lot. He was really good at like approaching the problems in nice ways and also teaching me how to, because I had a lot of experience messing around with prototypes and stuff, but no formal industry experience. So that was really good. And the DS is actually a very interesting console to work with because it's so constrained. It's got like 4 megs of RAM, and the CPU is like the kind of stuff you would find in a calculator. It can draw like a few thousand triangles and stuff, but it's really very constrained. So you have to work hard to make things fit, right? And we were doing actually a fairly ambitious game for what it was. It had like, so it was full 3D, and it had 5 different boutiques that you were managing as the main character. And so we ended up having to do like streaming of textures on the fly because there were too many objects to have loaded at the same time in memory. So when you were working from one boutique to the other, we were unloading stuff, loading it on the fly and stuff like that. So it was pretty amazing, and getting to just mess around with the development kits from Nintendo and stuff like that was, yeah, pretty great.
Yeah, I actually have like a pretty similar experience in the sense that my initial internship as well was at a video game company, and the product, it was pretty big. I was working on a Marvel mobile game, but again, I
Mm.
wasn't the target demographic. I don't play any mobile games. I'm not really into superheroes or like Marvel stuff. But regardless, I mean, I got kind of a similar experience, at least to what you did. Is my management and the support group around me was like really, really impressive in terms of like how much I changed over, I guess, that 8 months that I was there, and how much stronger I felt in terms of programming. So I can definitely relate to that. Um, yeah. So I mean, you worked at Creative Patterns, which is the company that we are just talking about for a little bit, and then it seems like you decided to, I guess, take a branch out and start your own endeavor. Can you talk about that? I
Well,
guess
yeah.
is that kind of how it went, or
Um,
was there some time in between?
no, yeah, not really. So basically, I was there for 3 years, almost 3 years, and what happened is the DS market basically um, like fell apart because it was people were moving on, and also there was like the advent of actual indie game developers. Like by then you could finally like have a decent internet connection to download games, and Steam was up and all that. So basically everything changed, and the company had trouble adapting to the new environment. So they had to lay off like a lot of people, and by the end we were like 8. And I stayed all the way till the end, until like the company had to close down, because it was my first job, and I was a little bit passive in my approach to my career, I guess. Just, what am I going to do if I leave? Like, I've got a job and stuff. So I stayed all the way up to the end, and like it was actually pretty rough for the last few months. Just the pay was late, and we were working on like uninteresting projects, trying to make ends meet and stuff. But yeah, it was what it was. And so yeah, by 2011, the summer of 2011, I was out of a job and on unemployment benefits. And so by then I had played quite a bit of Minecraft, which had come out like the couple years before. And yeah, I was really taken by the idea of this incredibly simple approach to games, right? Just blocks, just cubes, and low resolution textures and stuff. And the idea that could appeal to people and actually allow you to make basically anything was really exciting. And I figured, well, okay, that's great. Like, you can make a sort of RPG survival thing, like Minecraft is, but this is actually a new medium, almost. People could make anything within it. And so I started to imagine this idea of Craftstudio, which you know about, of course, which is this app that lets you make games based on this very boxy, cubic look. And you can make your own models in it. You can make your own maps. You can put them together in scenes, script them with Lua. And the fun thing for me was also to make it like real-time collaborative. So people could just join together on a server and work on the game together. So I wanted to make making the game sort of a game in itself. Have a good time making the game. Try to make it not too technical, not too you don't have to deal with too many like details, and just focus on making stuff. And yeah, so I started that in
Yes.
September,
Sorry to butt
like,
in
or
quickly.
August. Yeah,
I
yeah,
guess
sure.
yeah, a quick summary would be like I guess for people a little less technical or someone that's kind of doesn't have like the full picture, it's essentially like a video game to make games. I think would be like a really good like tagline
Yeah,
essentially.
I suppose.
And another element would be is that you could do this collaboratively. So instead of you just sitting at your desk by yourself programming whatever video game, you could have other people come in as well and help you work on that video game. But essentially, this programming process was kind of handled in more of like a gamified way, where it was really easy to like pick up these tools and make your own game. You wouldn't really need to know like too much like scripting or like modeling or all these complicated things that come into making a video game. It would be a lower barrier of entry, and you could be doing it with your friends and kind of helping each other out to work on it. So that's kind of like the essential idea behind Craftstudio. I don't know if you have anything else to add, I guess, about Craftstudio or things like that.
Yeah, no, I like you put it up really well. Yeah, so then I started working on that, and it was like a pretty ambitious project. Actually, it was the first time I was doing like a full blown platform with its own like it was not just a game, not just an app, but an app that was supposed to generate games. So yeah, but I was having a lot of fun with that. Like, I really felt like it was the thing that I wanted to be doing. So I did that for a little bit over 6 months. Then I did a crowdfunding campaign, and it turned out pretty well. And yeah, I managed to live of that for a few years.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about that. It's good that you brought up the crowdfunding campaign because that's actually a really big thing that people fail on for sure. Is like doing their initial. I don't know if you use Kickstarter or whatever, Indiegogo, or there's multiple
Yeah.
websites where you crowdsource money and people fund your project. And Craft Studio I think did extremely well, right? I think you received up to, well, I guess really well for like a single person working on a project. I think you made up to
Yeah.
like 30,000 maybe Canadian or American dollars. Do you have any idea why you think it did it so well? I think you had quite a decent amount of like prototyping done, where you basically had kind of a finished project to show off almost. I'm pretty sure. Like you had like the modeling done. I mean, most of the
Yeah.
program was like in its early stages. You could show something off. Do you think? I guess my question would be, what do you think led to the success of the Kickstarter campaign?
Right. Yeah. So I suppose a lot of it was indeed having something concrete to show already, right? If it had been just an idea, probably not much would have come of it. Um, but yeah, so I had like the modeling and animating part done. I think there was. I don't think you could make full games back then, but like yeah, I think I could show what it was going to do. Um, and yeah, like we worked hard on the video. It's not professionally produced or anything, but um, I think it showed, oh, there's someone behind this. He's serious about it. He wants to make it happen, and he's got stuff to show. And then, I mean, the goal was pretty low, right? So I chose to target 16,000 US dollars, which was actually like way too low of a goal, like after the fact for the kind of project it was. But
Yeah.
uh, since I was, just sort of a nobody on the scene back then, it was also hard to justify asking for more. And yeah, I think we did like 33,000 in the end. So like pretty good. And it allowed me definitely to, keep going for a while until I got the full product and stuff.
Mhm. Okay, so yeah, so I guess that was going to be another question. Is obviously, I think up until this point, it sounds like you're kind of living off of unemployment, like essentially working on Craft
Hmm.
Studio, and this kind of gave you the fund to at least work on it until release, or I guess like to the beta release, whichever version of
Hmm.
Craft Studio. Okay. Um, I guess the question would be is obviously Craft Studio, you supported it like a huge amount. I remember you having like a huge involvement in the community. The forums had kind of like their little niche group of people that I was kind of a part of myself. I guess this is where it ties back to my story at least is I think I was back in high school or maybe starting high school. I was just starting high school and I found Craft Studio. I think either through like Reddit, something like that. I think it was being advertised,
Hmm.
and this is where I got my initial I don't know, my initial start into like programming. I did maybe a little bit beforehand. And I was also like posting on the forums, like trying to get people help with my code because I had no idea how like variables worked or programming worked. And here I was like trying to build like some ambitious project that was probably never going to go anywhere. And yeah,
Right.
that's, I guess,
Yeah. I
uh,
remember your project. Like I can still see it. Your little RPG with the starter and all. It was really cool actually. And like for me, just um, seeing that someone on the other side of the world, someone young, just was getting his start with programming and stuff from my software. It was yeah very exciting and yeah validating in a way. Oh, okay, this thing can actually do stuff and people are into it. And, yeah.
yeah. So it definitely, I guess the high moments, at least for me, when I saw Craft Studio, is it got some. It seems like some games I think made ended up being played on like some popular channels. I think an example would
Right.
be at least what I can remember is the Yogscast playing one of the games that it was like the Minecraft fighter game, where it's like the
Yeah.
2D like Street Fighter game. So it did get some pretty good recognition in some avenues. You did support it for a decent amount of time, right? You put in probably thousands of hours like supporting this tool.
Right.
What would you say is kind of the reason why it stopped, or like why you decided to move on to your next project? What was kind of the key elements, I guess, kind of led you to that
Yeah.
decision?
So indeed, I released the first beta version, and then there were lots and lots of updates until we got to proper release, and then a bunch more. What I started to realize was the work I was doing, although like I was enjoying it, it didn't make any difference to like the sales of the software. It wasn't making it more popular or anything. And what I was getting in was like not even enough to make a full salary. So like, it was fine because I didn't have much cost of living, but it wasn't on a path to becoming something that could be like sustainable in the long run. So at some point, I realized, okay, I need to, if I want to keep doing this, like making games and software, I need to attack it from a different angle. So yeah, and I was kind of at a loss. Like probably there could have been more marketing stuff to be done, but I didn't have much experience with that. So I ended up deciding that I should start over with a different project. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, for sure. I think part of like being, I guess, a software developer myself, it seems very daunting at least to run a company because that's essentially what you're doing, right? Is you're essentially running a company, you're taking payments from people, you're trying to basically push this product and push this product as much as you can, and not having a background in that would be very, extremely scary at least. Trying to do like the marketing for that, right? You're essentially like the
Yeah.
go-to person for all these things. You obviously managed to
Yeah.
run a successful Kickstarter, so that's pretty cool. But yeah, it seemed like obviously if you're not making enough revenue, if the project isn't going anywhere, it doesn't seem reasonable to support it. I'm not saying that you didn't support it. Obviously, you did a huge amount of updates, like thousands, probably thousands of hours of updates to your program, because I remember you always doing constant releases for it. Anyways, yeah. So I
Right.
guess you talked about taking it from a different angle, and I guess that's where Superpowers came from, right? That was kind of the next project that you kind of
Right.
set your focus to. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I guess in the meantime, I did a few small web games too, but those were more like to let steam off and just do fun stuff. But yeah, so the next serious project was Superpowers, which was basically the idea. Okay, maybe another way to do this would be to make it open source and invite the community to also take part in the development process to an extent, and to make it a more modular platform. So instead of having like the few editors built in and locked in, I figured maybe we could make a more general game development platform where each editor, each new type of asset can be provided by a piece of code that is sort of self-contained, and that way maybe someone could come in and say, oh, I've got this idea for a new editor that could add this feature to the product, and I'll contribute some of it. And I also wanted to stop working all on my own, because like it had been maybe 3 years, and it can be pretty taxing,
mhm.
just feeling like you said, having the whole of the project on your shoulders. So I had met Bilou and Pixel Boy through Craftstudio, actually, like just making games together and chatting and stuff. So there are two French people too, and I could feel like we had a lot of uh, like easy exchanges and stuff. Like we had fun together. So I asked them if they wanted to join me to work on a new project, which felt like a big step. Just wow, I'm asking people to uproot their lives and just come join me from the other side of France. And to my surprise, they did. So yeah. That's how we got started on Superpowers.
Yeah, and so to give, I guess, another like quick summary, as in terms of like how Superpowers differed from Craft Studio, is Superpowers was kind of the same idea. I would say that it was obviously built on a much modern platform, where essentially it could basically be ran anywhere because it was, from what it seems like, it was using JavaScript with Electron,
Right.
which is like a really popular, I guess, library application that allows you to run things on everywhere. So a lot of the apps that you see today, like Discord, for example, the Slack client you use, a lot of apps are Electron because they allow easy integration for like web apps, desktop apps, etc. And then obviously another big thing was open source, is being able to allow other people to come in, view the code, and contribute additional features, which you'd think would probably like improve maybe community interaction in a tool that probably kind of needs it. Um, yeah. I guess my questions would be for this project. How did you, again, in this case, how did you manage to fund this project? Was it just purely through savings? Did you have, I think I remember some donation process where you kind of ran like a, not a, like a fundraising stream. Was that kind of like the main avenue this time around?
Yeah, so back then the new model of Patreon had emerged. So this idea of supporting a creator on a monthly basis, which didn't exist back when Craft Studios was started. And so I figured that sounded good, because what we needed was like regular support to be able to keep going. So having someone pay just one time for a product doesn't really work if you want to support it for years and years, if you can't sell anything more, unless you can always find new people. And so the idea was to say, okay, we're going to actually open source this thing, and it will be free for anybody. But if you want us to be able to continue on it, you can support us with a monthly donation. And so yeah, at first I think we did our own little crowdfunding thing, and then we migrated to Patreon. And I guess we managed to get up to 1,200 euros a month, something like that, which was like pretty cool. You've like people are choosing, excuse me,
Yeah, no worries.
people are choosing to donate money on a monthly basis for no reason except they're excited about it, and they want to help. But that was definitely not enough for three people.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, we were living together, so it was, the cost of living again was quite low, and it wasn't too much of a problem. But we ended up going for, I guess, a year and a half, maybe 2 years. And then we realized, okay, this has run its course. It's again not. People are using it. There's a community and stuff, but it's not going to go into something that could last us for 10 years or something. So we need to move on. Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess my kind of thoughts would be for sure. I mean, it's extremely difficult to kind of write in a game engine and like get it supported. I've only used like a few different game engines. Obviously, I worked with Craftstudio. I did a little bit of project work in Superpowers because I think I was ending, well, I might have been maybe ending high school or yeah, maybe towards the end of my high school. So I knew a little bit more programming, and I worked with Superpowers a little bit more. Superpowers definitely did seem like a massive improvement for sure. I think if I was if I was in the current position with all my knowledge, I definitely would have been like a person that'd be contributing to the repo and everything.
Mhm.
Because yeah, I think what you did here was almost all the right steps in terms of like picking out the right technologies to build your project off of. But it seemed like yeah, it just didn't have enough support in terms of like funding and things like that. Um, but it did manage to obviously create in both cases like pretty awesome niche communities. I say niche,
Yeah.
but like it had some really nice communities in terms of like the forums and people talking to each other and everything. And obviously, you mentioned that you met your two, I guess, like coworkers almost, or like the co-developers of the project, which is also pretty cool. Like creating your own platform, meeting two people, and then uprooting their lives and bringing them to work with you on a new project. It's very
Right.
I mean, that's very unconventional, like in terms of like the software or like computer science path. I'm just saying that because I've lived so far like a very conventional, like straight narrow line in terms of like where I've what I've done with my life. Like I graduated high school, I went directly into university. I'm doing my internships, and I'm probably gonna finish university and then maybe find some job. I haven't had the chance to at least do like a passion project like this where I'm like, listen, I'm going to dedicate X amount of years of my life and hopefully I can build something cool out of it. Yeah, that was just my long little rant. Yeah, so I think you mentioned kind of the reason why Superpowers kind of tapered off is because obviously the funding wasn't there, which makes sense. I mean, there's 1,200 euros a month for three people. It just doesn't make, it's just obviously not enough to support a project, as cool as it was. Um, I guess a overarching question would be kind of like what your thoughts are on current game engines. Do you think that current game engines kind of do what you've kind of set out to do in Craftstudio and Superpowers, or do you think there's still kind of a niche for one of your projects if it had enough supports?
Right. So there's been quite a bit of collaboration features appearing in the various game engines since then. So like I think you can do it in Unity, you can do it in various other engines. I still think that what I'm really interested in is this very quick approach to getting started, not going through loads of options and getting overwhelmed, by the possibility of a very generic game engine. So um, on the 3D side, I think it's still lacking. I'm still not convinced someone has hit the point. So yeah, I still feel an itch to work in that direction and try to. I really like the game engines. There are commercial game engines they're great for what they're doing, but they're really more work tools, and I want to bring out the joy of game making. So yeah.
Yeah, I would say like personally, I would say like I've only worked with Unity and Unreal. I worked with Unity in the professional sense for a few months, and Unreal just in my free time. I don't think there's any program that makes it as easy as like creating a model, like in the same program that you're working with, animating that model,
Mhm.
texturing that model, and putting it into your game. I don't think there's any other like maybe other than like 2D game making programs, but there's no actual solution that does like 3D modeling, 3D texturing, animating, and putting it into your game. Maybe I just don't know any other game engines, but it definitely seems like it's kind of lacking in terms of like if you compare it to Unity, for example, because I mean importing models in Unity, like being like a, I don't know, like a fresh game developer is an extremely complicated process. Because I mean, you're
Yeah,
using an
yeah.
external program to build out those models. You're probably having to rig them, texture them, and then transfer them over back into Unity. Whereas kind of your solutions would be doing it all in one engine, and it was really easy. I mean, back when I was like 13 years old, I was like managed to do this stuff. Yeah, it's just obviously unfortunate that it didn't have the kind of the support that it needed to pick up and maybe be as a game engine that people use um, more often than like Unity or like Unreal or like the two big ones. Um, yeah, so I guess obviously after the Superpowers project, what was kind of your transition onto the next kind of thing in your life?
Right. So by early 2016, like I said, we were thinking of just breaking things off and moving on. And um, that's when I was contacted by a little Minecraft server called Hypixel, which you might have heard of. And so, I mean, as I said little, even back then they weren't little. I think they were probably already one of the biggest Minecraft server in the world. And I didn't know anything about all that world, like the mini game servers. But it actually it always is always been a huge thing. Like hundreds of I mean, tens of thousands and now hundreds of thousands of players were connecting to those servers and playing sort of mini games within Minecraft, which were providing different gameplay, and competitive gameplay and all sorts of stuff. And it was pretty amazing. And I discovered that they were already employing like dozens of people working on that server. So it meant that it was bringing in enough money to pay all those people and stuff, which was really impressive. And what they wanted to do is they told me they were working on their own game now, like they were trying to transition to being their own game studio. And they had this project that they had been building for a bit over a year, which they were using Craftstudio for making the models for it, which I had no idea. And they were working with one of my ex coworkers, Thomas Frick, which he did a little bit of work on like Craftstudio marketing stuff and making some promotional models and stuff because like he's really good with that. And so like I had heard that they hired him a while ago, but I didn't know much about what was going on. And he told me you should look into this seriously. Like it's really cool, and they're making we're making something cool. And so yeah, I learned a little bit about this project, which was to become Hytale at some point, but it didn't have the name back then. When they reached out, I was a little bit um, in a difficult situation because I was still working with Bidoo and Pixel Boy, and I didn't want to leave them and stuff. So I asked, "Are you interested in hiring more people than just one?" And I introduced Bidoo and Pixel Boy, and we did a game jam which we were live streaming, and so they used the game jam as sort of an interview to learn about them, which was really cool. And yeah, and so they ended up offering a job to the three of us. Pixel Boy wanted to do something else, but Bidoo and I ended up joining Hytale, Hypixel, back in February of 2016.
Yeah, I wanted to say it's funny that I like mentioned that I think the Craft Studio process for like creating models and same with superpowers was like such an easy process that you basically had some random team discover the tool and start using it for their tools themselves. Like it's like crazy to think
Yeah,
that like the idea behind Craft Studio obviously was to make games, but they found the model editor, the animator, and the texturing so intuitive that they basically just wanted to use that for their own little game as like their own little in-house tool, which is pretty funny to
right.
hear. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, so we don't have to talk too much about it, but I guess Hytale obviously is maybe even more has more hype or anticipation than maybe Cyberpunk. Maybe I'm just saying that myself, but it has
possibly.
it has. I think the trailer came out for the initial game and had like hundreds or maybe not hundreds of millions of views, but tens of millions of views at
uh,
least for sure.
yeah,
Um,
more than 50. Yeah,
yeah.
which is completely nuts.
So an extremely big project, and obviously you're hired onto it. I think I'm just gonna talk about it like the things that were said publicly, so that way you don't have to talk about anything that happens on the private end because it's still in development. But it seems like you definitely took a part into working on their kind of in-house game engine, basically. So their idea is that inside their game, they want to let users also make games inside of it. So like mini games, essentially. And so you were basically working on porting most of the stuff from Craftstudio, Craftstudio being a game to make games, and they want to pull this into their game, essentially. And that was kind of a majority of your work being done, I'm assuming. Does it
Yeah,
sound
yeah.
like a
So I
sound?
can talk.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
go
I can
on.
talk a little bit about it. So when I joined, first I was working on like making a new modeling tool that was a little bit more capable and more specific to what they wanted for the game. So I spent a few months on that alongside Bidou, and then yeah, they had their prototype game engine, which was like really cool in showing off what the potential, but it had a lot of issues. So I ended up. Suggesting that maybe we should rewrite and stuff. So I led the initial work on the rewrites um, of the client side part of it. Yeah, and then I worked on various things like all over the project for years. Yeah.
Mhm. So it seems like you kind of landed a pretty well-funded like game studio because I mean obviously they had decent funding coming from their Minecraft servers, probably from like other avenues, so they're pretty stable. And it seems like you decided to, I guess, leave and obviously work on another adventure. What was kind of your reasoning behind, I guess, leaving this studio if that's not too personal, or like moving
Yeah.
on to your next project?
Yeah. Sure. So when I joined, the project had like it was already quite ambitious, but um, like the scope of it seemed reasonable and stuff. So I was very excited about that. Over time, it ended up growing even bigger, and the ambitions grew bigger because the trailer had so much hype around it, and yeah. And so at one point, I just felt like, okay, this is for like I don't feel like I'm making that big of a difference anymore in this. It's this big machine, that's going at its own pace, and the team grew a lot and stuff, and yeah, I just felt like this is no longer matching with my approach to game development. Like I want small teams making big differences and advancing quickly, and they were more like let's add more and more people and really um, go into big studio mode and stuff. And yeah, there were like technical choices that I didn't agree with, and there were lots of discussion and stuff. And yeah, basically in the end, I felt like um, on a day-to-day basis, I'm no longer enjoying this. So I hesitated for a long time, because it was, like you said, a well-funded company with like so proper salary and it was amazing to have this team all over the world. So there were no offices, right? We were just working from with people from home, but like all over
Before
the
Corona,
world. So
yeah, before
yeah,
coronavirus, yeah.
yeah, right. Yeah, so um, it was just so many good things, and then a few things that didn't work for me, and at some point it just became more important for me to move on and do my own thing than to keep going. And yeah, so I left like in March of last year.
Yeah, I don't think that's too obviously like unreasonable response as someone that literally has attempted to create their own two different like game development platforms. It seems like you definitely just wanted something different for sure. Um,
Yeah.
I think one note that I just wanted to say is awesome to see kind of the resurgence of Craftstudio after so many years in Hytale. I was browsing some of the Hytale, I think, subreddits, and people were like talking and posting their models that they created in Craftstudio, like almost like so many years after. And people, I see that you even like to this day like respond to some of the comments on like the Craftstudio download page because people have issues like installing this super old program. Well, it's like kind of old relatively, but it's kind of it is using pretty old technology at this point. I see that
Yeah.
even until this day, you like respond people trying to help people like install their builds and stuff like that. Because there's a lot of people in the Hytale community using your Craft Studio program to like make the models and like showcase it to the community, even though they have no idea like what's going on internally like yet in terms of like Hytale, like what they plan to do with their model editor and everything. I don't know. I just found it funny to see that after so many years after you have maybe even like a decent resurgence of like people using Craft Studio, maybe not, but yeah, just a funny
Yeah,
note.
yeah. I mean, yeah, it's pretty cool, to just um, see the thing that Yeah, but I mean, to some extent, Craftstudio like contributed to the story of Hytale, and even if Craftstudio in itself didn't have this big success, it's a success in this way of being part of this story and stuff. So that's, yeah, very nice, very very nice to feel like I've made some of it possible, right?
Mhm. Yeah, and so I guess transitioning into, I guess, one of the last kind of big projects, was there kind of anything you did in between while you left Hytale, or was it kind of like you had this next idea and you're going to pursue it again? I'm
Right. So
specifically
what?
talking, or
Yeah.
sorry, I'm specifically talking about, I guess,
Yeah.
JKLM. Is it,
Right.
do
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
pronounce it?
It's a
Is it?
code name, right?
Okay, sure.
Yeah. So in French, it sounds a little less like it rolls off the tongue a little bit better. But yeah, I'm gonna find a new name. So yeah. So when I left Hypixel Studios, I was, just not quite burnt out, but just I needed time to, do things just for fun, and not worry about too much stuff. So I had those games, those web games, which I mentioned a little bit earlier.
Hmm.
So Bomb Party, Master of the Grid, and stuff like that, which I had done and just sort of let live on their own. But they had gathered actually quite a bit of interest from mostly French players. So there were like a couple hundred players on them every night, and they were sort of falling apart from being old technology and not being maintained and stuff. Like the servers were struggling to keep up with the load, and so I figured it would be nice to make a new home for them, like remake the games, and so I brought them under so JKLM.fun, which the idea was just to have a very short domain name, easy to remember, because the previous domain name was really long and unwieldy, and people were always struggling. And so yeah, I did that, and actually. That's well, like the pandemic had started by then, so people were at home a lot, and so I guess there was sort of a coincidence of oh yeah, you've got games to play with your friends online, party games, game night games, and yeah, it worked quite well in terms of garnering even more audience, and I was happy to just be taking care of those projects, but there was like no, I didn't even have like any plan of doing anything with that, no monetization or anything, and so I did that for a couple months, maybe just getting it all in shape. And then I got offered a job in Bordeaux, so on the other side of France, in a company like Shiro Games, they're called. They make a Northgard, which you might have heard of. Um, yeah,
Yeah,
and
like it's like the
so I was
top-down
like,
game, I think, right? It's like a strategy.
yeah, strategy game, yeah, with Vikings, and I love that game. So and I liked what they the like even the engineering culture at Shiro Games is really interesting. They share a lot of stuff. They have their own programming language, and like it's pretty crazy. Um, and so I figured, okay, yeah, why not? Let's try something new. So I joined, and I had a lot of fun. I met cool people, but I only stayed for like 3 months because I realized right away, oh, I've got this creative spark in me that I need to attend to. This is not for me. Like being in an office and having regular hours and stuff. Like I hadn't done that for 10 years since Creative Patterns, and
Sure.
yeah, I just I couldn't. So we talked a little bit, and like we tried to find solution, but in the end we just parted ways in a very uh, very nice way, like no hard feelings on either side. And yeah, since November I've been now starting this new project, which is basically, so I'm seeing it as sort of an evolution of this online games platform, JKLM.fun, which now I'm calling for now JKLM.land. And the idea is to replace those 2D games with very, like, you've got regular menus, you click on stuff to enter a game and stuff, and make it just more of a world, like a connected world of 3D lobbies and 3D games, and you've got your character, and you can customize your character, and you can move around in the world and just go from game to game. So trying to make it sort of a place to hang out, and um, yeah, so something to connect people, because like that feels like a thing to do in those times. And I'm really excited to also be bringing back elements of Craftstudio and Superpowers, in that there will be official games on the platform, but I'm also building a model editor and a new animation editor, a new scene editor, and giving the chance for people to make their own kingdoms, their own games, and connect them to the platform. So it could be this sprawling thing of just official high quality content, and then community content of all sorts of like very high quality, very very experimental stuff from anybody. And I'm hoping it just becomes sort of a big town where you can walk around in and have fun and try things and learn. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it definitely sounds really interesting. I guess a few questions to ask would be, I wonder, what do you think is the main reason why these games kind of have a French audience? Because I definitely looked into some of this stuff, and it is really, well, at least maybe the videos I've seen, it is really being supported by the French community. I looked up some of the videos of some of the, I guess in this case, I'm talking about the web games that you've developed. They have like millions of views. People, like the French
Right.
YouTubers that I don't know anything about, because obviously I don't speak any French. But they have millions of views playing like Bomb Party and Master of the Grid, right? Yeah,
Right.
those two. What do you think kind of garnered the French audience? Obviously, just you advertising it in French, like on your French Twitter. Like, what do you think? Kind of.
I don't even think so, because well, I wonder if I tweeted in French or English back then. But yeah, I mean, I guess it sort of happened by from person to person. Just back then, I know the games were posted on like a couple French forums where people just hang out. So I think it just grew organically,
Mhm.
Then it hit a few big YouTubers, and yeah, once you've got 1 million video about something that streamers or YouTubers can play with their community, then the others pick up about it, and they're like, oh, I want that too, because that's an amazing experience for a video creator to be able to interact with their audience. But there were actually like a few American, or at least English speaking YouTubers and streamers who did quite a bit. But yeah, it didn't take off as much, I guess. So
Mhm.
yeah, it's kind of a mystery.
I don't know, just one follow up question because I'm so interested. Those games were in English, weren't they? Like they're mostly, or were they? Yeah, I think they're mostly in English, no?
um, I'm
Or was
trying
it a
to
mix
see.
of
No,
both?
no, actually, yeah, basically it detects your browser language, and
Okay.
you can switch. So yeah, yeah,
So it's just supporting both languages. Okay, this kind of seems kind of
yeah,
reasonable. I would find it really weird if it was basically like an entire French audience playing like this English game. Well, I guess obviously most French
yeah.
people can probably speak English, but
Mm,
still, um,
not so much.
yeah.
Like we are very in our own little world.
Mhm.
um, yeah,
And I
yeah. No, I
think
definitely needed French. Yeah.
And I think one of the aspects is, at least with these web games, even though they're kind of small projects, is the ability to kind of hop into them was like really easy. Like you basically, I think, just click on a few buttons and you're instantly in the game.
Yeah.
So it's not surprising that kind of after these YouTubers just kind of randomly picked up these interesting games, people instantly jumped in because it's really easy to jump into these web games. You don't really have to download anything. You just type in your username, probably sign in. Even if that, sometimes it's just, I haven't looked into obviously the projects too much. But yeah, it seems like, I think I checked a few days ago, and it seems like maybe it was just one of the games, but I think you had like 400 active users in like the American, or I guess the U.S. sorry, Canadian time zone I was looking at. Um,
Okay.
which is like
Yeah, I
pretty
mean,
impressive. I mean, a lot of like call you an indie developer, but a lot of smaller studios definitely would be extremely happy with seeing 400 plus like active players on one of their titles. Um,
right.
you can
Yeah.
comment, but it kind of wasn't a question. But if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, sure, sure. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it feels really good just to know that people have, having fun and connecting around that. And yeah, for me, like it was a choice that I specifically made to make it really easy to join the game, right? So having a very short link that you can just send to someone with that would link you directly into the particular game that you want them to join and stuff. And I think yeah, all those small aspect that I tried to make it easy to play, it pays off in that lack of friction, and so that's how you onboard many new players, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. Following back with a question that I've basically asked you on all these things is kind of what is your funding at this point? Is it kind of primarily through like ad revenue? Or are you kind of taking on like kind of the Patreon model? Um, if you could talk about that a little more, how do you plan to kind of work through this project, or at least to fund it a little more? Um, yeah.
Right. Yes. So right now I'm basically not making any money. Like I guess there's still some ads on Master of the Grid, which one might bring in, less than €100 a month. So it's really not much. But um, The plan for the new platform is to um, since it's going to be like very visual, like actual 3D models and all that stuff, and you've got a character, I'm planning on doing what basically everybody does, so selling some cosmetics, because I think it's a very ethical way to do it. I like the fact that it doesn't make gameplay modification. It doesn't have any advantages for the people who can afford to pay. So yeah, there's that. And yeah, I guess taking a page from all the Minecraft servers and stuff, you can sell like ranks, so basically supporter levels, so people can decide to pay, and they get like some badges, some small things that just show their support, and it seems to work quite well, right? um, so yeah, that's sort of the idea. And then hopefully I would really love if it does pick up, and if there's lots of players and stuff. I would love for game makers who would participate in the platform to be able to make money on it too. And so the idea would be maybe to have like a virtual currency all over the platform, where you can convert some money into those whatever they would be called, and like coins. And then when you're inside of a game, you can pay for some cosmetics, for some maybe giving an advantage for all the players within the game, so it's not like unfair. And I would take a cut of that, and the platform, the game maker would get some of it. And yeah, that it would be amazing if like that could help fund other game developers in making their own thing. Yeah.
Yeah, kind of like a maybe like a Steam Workshop kind of idea where you kind of have like this base game and
Right.
other people are creating content for it. I guess in this case, Valve takes like a cut of that revenue, and they kind
Hmm.
of help support some of the developers. Yeah, no, I mean that makes sense. In terms of like maybe you haven't thought about this too much, or maybe it's something to think about in the future. What do you think in terms of like where Superpowers kind of went? Superpowers and Craftstudio kind of didn't pick up enough steam in terms of, I think you kind of mentioned marketing. Do you kind of have any ideas with that, or do you think kind of the natural growth of kind of JKLM so far has been kind of way more than Craftstudio and Superpowers had? That you think that you'll just be able to develop this, not really have to worry about it too much, and as you kind of add features, you're just going to grow the user base kind of naturally. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. So the hope is that, because I'm taking it from the other side this time, like instead of going from game makers, like catering to game makers first, and trying to make something of it, but here it's players first. And there's actually, like you said, a pretty healthy community, and I think it has the potential to grow organically from the fact that you just invite friends who invite friends, and they can play very easily and stuff. So yeah, I'm hoping that there's something there. If there's already a player base, like 1,000 players regular, then it will attract game developers, and that will attract more players and stuff. And then I guess I learn maybe a little bit more about how to tell my story, how to get people interested in what I'm doing and stuff. So I'm hoping just making content about it. Like I've been live streaming a lot in French, which has gathered a small following, but I think it has some value. Yeah,
Yeah,
all
well,
those things. And maybe I might actually like spend actual money on ads, which I haven't really done yet. Now I've got a little bit of money on that I can spare for that, so could work too.
yeah, I wanted to mention that maybe this isn't like, at least to me this is pretty impressive, at least your live streams, because I catch some of them just a little bit, like just see you kind of live streaming, even though like the viewership is like not massive like relative to massive Twitch streamers, like obviously it's not in the tens of thousands, but the amount of viewership that you're able to garner like puts you up like pretty high in the percentiles of like overall on Twitch. So it's still
Hmm.
pretty impressive to see how many people are interested in watching you even program the game. Because yeah, I
Right.
mean, honestly, the amount of viewership you get it might be even like some of the might be higher than like the overall like active users that Craft Studio kind of had at some points like during development.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Yeah.
maybe not. Maybe those are just the numbers I remember. But yeah, it's kind of interesting to see kind of the excitement around the project, at least from what I can see. I don't speak too much French, but it's kind of what I looked into it. Yeah, I guess summarizing most of this, what are your, I guess you kind of mentioned kind of your plans of the future. It seems like kind of JKLM is going to be your main project that you're going to be working on. Probably you're going to be involved with game jams, as you are always, right? Um,
Yeah.
Yeah, if you have any, or I guess here's just some random comment. I don't know how much helpful this is or anything. I definitely think there is kind of a market for kind of like a collaborative game where people can come in and like customize their characters and like walk around in like a community or an environment. I don't know if you know, there is a streamer named Reckful. He was working on a game called Everland, which was essentially like almost like maybe like a Club Penguin or like a Habba Hotel,
Right.
where you essentially create
Hmm.
your avatar, you're placed in like a world, and it's basically like a chat. It's like a walking chat game, like a 2D game where you walk around and chat with other people. I personally don't think that there is a game for that right now, where people can like hop into a game and just like purely like customize their avatar, play certain types of mini games, and that was kind of like what the project that Reckful was working on. Until he unfortunately committed suicide, I think, last year
Oh.
due to depression issues. Um, but yeah, you can definitely check out that project as well. Not to.
All right. Yeah, I wasn't aware of it. So yeah, definitely check it out.
Mhm.
I think there's like definitely, there's already ways in which this exists, but it's not obvious. Like in a way, people hanging out in Fortnite, on Minecraft servers, in Roblox, it's all sort of the same concept of I want to hang out, do something maybe light, and sometimes go into actual games, but and have a place that I feel is sort of an online home. So that's sort of definitely where I think this could work big. And there's also this idea of, again, with streamers and content creators, they I think it could be quite exciting for them to have like their own place within that universe that they can customize and make it their own, make it look like their stream, like make it look like their community. So that's, yeah, could
Yeah,
have new to explore.
yeah, no, it definitely sounds like a very very interesting project. Um, yeah, wrapping it up. Do you have any like final comments or final thoughts to talk about anything we've kind of talked about? Anything off the
Well,
top of your head?
I yeah, sure. I mean, I guess I'd like to mention that it's really nice to to finally meet you, and to thinking back on. I remember like from afar, of course, but seeing your start and stuff. It's really nice to see that um, you find a path towards yeah, game development and computer science and stuff. Um, and I'm very excited for whenever I get to meet someone who told me, "Hey, I got started on Craftstudio and stuff."
And they're like they make the
It's
next Minecraft or like the next huge indie game, and they're like, yeah, I was making these models back in Craftstudio. Yeah.
right.
I
Yeah.
have here, I
So
can
it's
mention this cute little story before we kind of wrap this up. Is I
sure.
remember I don't even think I had enough money to even buy Craft Studio. So I remember sending you an email and I'm like, hey, listen, I don't have enough money for Craft Studio. Can you like spot me the difference? And you're like, yeah, like go make something in Craft Studio, send it over to me, and I'll give it to you for a reduced price. Like just PayPal me the money. I'm like, all right. And I think I was just
Oh,
like some
right.
poor 13-year-old, and so you ended up just giving me the game the copy of Craft Studio at like a reduced price or whatever, which is funny. Even though
Oh, that's
Craft
cool.
Studio wasn't even that expensive, it was just I was 13 years old and just didn't have enough money. Yeah,
I'm glad I did then. That's
yeah.
cool.
Anyways, do you want to shout out any places that people can follow you? Kind of your main areas where people want to check out your Twitter or follow. It's just the
Sure.
main area
Yeah.
where everyone
Yeah.
should gather and check out your stuff for the future.
Yeah. So I guess you can check out yeah, my Twitter. Like right now I'm tweeting a lot in French, but I'll definitely be switching back to English when I go back in release mode, So yeah, twitter.com/Élisée, which is ELISEE. Yeah, just follow me there if you're interested in what I do. I'm posting screenshots, and if you can want to listen to some French live streams, I'll be posting links there too.
You
Yeah.
communicate a bit in English as well, right? For some English viewers, like the chat isn't flowing like too crazy, like to the point of which you can't respond to
Right.
people.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
if
If
you're an
someone
English
if someone
person,
comes in, yeah.
yeah, feel free to pop in. You just said it was you have the Twitter handle at Elisee. I guess it's also in the
Yeah.
chat in the description for anyone that wants to check it out alongside your Twitch channel. And then I guess you can check out either Craft Studio. Craft Studio is kind of not being supported anymore, obviously because it's very old. You can download that. But I guess the main project to check out would be obviously the web games under JKLM, which would be Bomb Party, which is like a fun little neat web game. Um, I don't want to explain it too much. And then obviously Master of the Grid. Those two games are kind of like the main two ones you can play right now. Yeah, that's kind of it. Anything else?
No,
All
I
right,
guess not.
all right, that's a wrap.